Despite claiming to be apolitical, the Manosphere showed infinite loyalty to then candidate Donald Trump. Granted, it wasn't everybody, but it was enough that even saying something positive about Obama or Biden triggered rebuke. Its support for Trump had little to do with policy.
That's kind of what snapped, right? That was the moment when that was like that final October surprise or whatever they call it. And I was like, who gives a fuck? He grabs him by the pussy. Like, that's awesome.
I've had people trying to shame me. Oh, so you're going to vote for a guy. You know, would you want your daughter to marry Donald Trump? Like, I would want my daughter to marry someone with his level of masculinity, but I'd want him to be more moral.
The one reason is his ass can eradicate feminism for the next 4 years, and maybe Mike Pence can get elected after he's out of office for 8 more years.
Yep, it was largely symbolic. The group believed he represented unapologetic masculinity and served as a rebuke against liberalism, which some content creators felt had gone too far with cancel culture, political correctness, and Black Lives Matter.
Look at what we got going on right now. Me Too, social justice warriorism, all of the abuses of political correctness, etc., etc., etc. I got tired of that. And Trump is a big pushback and rebuke of all of that. So that was one of the major reasons why I supported him. Because he's one of the few guys left in America that is actually a guy. And unapologetically so.
But after the 2020 presidential election, the group focus on politics had dwindled. For months, it supported baseless allegations of election fraud. Some had sincerely convinced themselves that despite losing the 2020 election, Trump would remain president after Inauguration Day.
You go look at any of these conservative channels, and you look at the amount of live viewers they got watching, and look at the chat room. All you see in the chat room is voter fraud, voter fraud, voter fraud, Trump 2020, Trump 2020. They're not getting away with this.
Several men from the group attended a rally in DC where attendees stormed the Capitol. 2 men for the community are currently facing criminal charges for illegal entry into a restricted building and disorderly conduct on Capitol grounds. But after the inauguration, the group's interest in politics had dissipated. There are far less videos about politics than there were prior to the storming of the Capitol. The sudden loss of interest made me think about how the Manosphere sought to position itself into the algorithm of conservative YouTube. Most of these men aren't true conservatives or Republicans. They constitute a segment of the Trump base of independent voters who largely align with the Republican Party but remain disengaged from the electoral process. But their support for Trump, I argue, wasn't just ideological, it was also opportunistic. Unlike other social media platforms, conservative commentators gravitate to YouTube and have built substantial followings. Some have earned positions as commentators on Fox News and positions in conservative organizations, so it's no surprise that the Manosphere sought to reach out to conservative YouTubers with hopes of gaining more subscribers and viewership. It was evident when YouTuber Angry Man changed one of his channels to The Street Conservative, other YouTubers reorganized their channels around conservative politics. In the Black Manosphere, YouTubers interview guests on why black men should vote for Trump. Any program that was pro-Obama or Biden triggered backlash. The Red Pill wasn't alone in the switch. When Trump ran for president and eventually won, YouTubers who were either on the left or apolitical started to cater to conservative audiences. With hindsight, this sudden change might seem odd, but it's quite logical when you place it in the context of American political history since World War II. Apart from the Reagan and Bush era, Democrats and Republicans have held the White House 8 years going back and forth. Since then, only 2 incumbents who served a full term had lost re-election, Jimmy Carter in 1980 and George H.W. Bush in 1992. Remember, Gerald Ford was an unelected president and vice president. Since 1992, 3 consecutive presidents had won re-election, so it wasn't a far-off guess to think Trump could be a 2-term president, but then COVID happened. Crises are usually a boost to sitting presidents, but Trump's gross ineptitude to do the bare minimum cost him greatly. After Trump won in 2016, sectors of the Manosphere celebrated the victory as a rebuke against political correctness. A true alpha male, in their eyes, had vanquished the opposition.
Just to answer your question, on whether or not Donald Trump is an actual alpha male. And the answer to that is absolutely. This guy is 100% alpha, and I'm going to tell you why.
The black sector held a dubious belief that the Trump administration would cut welfare programs, and in response, black women will become submissive to black men.
Black men have got to reassert their unquestioned authority in the home, period. And we have to get behind policies and procedures that will strengthen, not undermine, the black man in his own house. We got to bring these broads to heel.
But Trump's victory also represented a shift in the manosphere, which had proclaimed to be apolitical. Content creators were now encouraging their subscribers to adopt right-wing political views and insist liberal values were unmasculine.
That's an easy one to ask people, is like, do you vote left or right? And if the guy you're asking says he votes left, he's blue pill. I don't know a single Democrat, a single person on the left that is red pill. Because just by going red pill, you will quickly realize that anyone on the left, anyone who identifies as a Democrat, is pushing for all of those leftist ideologies. Okay, all of those blue pill values and beliefs.
12 seconds later.
And I'm neither, by the way. I mean, I don't vote. I have my own reasons for that.
Even opposing a talking point, content creators will portray you as a far leftist. Now, when it comes to politics, I do sincerely take the time to understand where someone is coming from, but it was difficult to do with red pillars because so few cited policies they supported.
To Aaron Fountain, everyone that is not worried about Brittany Cooper withholding sex from us is for the president. How about that?
There are indeed some lifelong Republicans in the group, but others literally cited two policies and nothing else: Trump's funding of HBCUs and the First Step Act. But that was fairly it from what I encountered. They also made excuses for some of Trump's inexcusable behavior, even believing his first debate performance was stellar despite polls claiming otherwise. I also had difficulty taking many of them seriously when they made anachronistic arguments about the Democratic Party and admitted to not knowing who William Buckley and Michael Steele were. In many cases, you can tell that many of their talking points came from the internet and not years of thorough or even casual research. They don't read conservative publications such as the Manhattan Institute for Policy, the Wall Street Journal, or the National Review. Few knew about prominent conservative individuals. When it came to black conservatives, most argued in favor of right-wing canards that the Democratic Party is the party of oppression, not realizing how political allegiances switched during the course of the 20th century.
This is why no one talks about history, to protect themselves from the actual thing.
By that same token, I can say that if you know the history of politics, there's no way a black man can call himself a Democrat.
There's no way a black man can call himself a progressive if they know history.
Yeah.
The Ku Klux Klan is progressivism. Another example of conservatism was the Jim Crow South. Excuse me, not progressivism. Progressivism
Jim Crow South
was Jim Crow.
plenty anti-black.
That was progressivism.
Nor did they understand that draconian criminal justice laws were a bipartisan effort in the post-World War II era. But the support for Trump cost some content creators dearly. At least two individuals had been arrested for storming the Capitol. Former classmates of self-proclaimed dating coach Pat Stedman alerted the FBI about his presence at the Capitol and even alleged he lived with his parents. He is currently facing criminal charges for unlawful entry into a restricted building and disorderly conduct on Capitol grounds after bragging about storming the Capitol on Twitter. One SYSBM opponent who was at the rally claimed he was done with politics after witnessing what he saw in DC. The storming of the Capitol was a defeat of the Manosphere catering to conservative audiences. This is unsurprising to say the least. Most had absolutely little to no interest in politics before Trump emerged on the political scene and then started toting right-wing canards with little original input. Although some members of the group have tried to sweep their support under the rug by hiding past videos, one should never forget how much the group embraced Trumpism to the bitter end.